found the USP for the UK in being able to lead advancements in, in greater space sector sustainability? Who would like to kind of talk about that? I mean, from what I've heard, we can do everything from Cornwall because we've got Goonhilly, we've got an airport, we've got the intent, we've got the action. So yeah, what's the USP?
Obviously the UK has also had a good history of innovation, and we have technical skills which are really important to apply to sustainability and sustainability in space. I think what's particularly good in the UK at the moment, maybe for more the small businesses and startup community, is that there's a really good government commitment towards sustainable space and space generally. We have a UK Space Agency, we have a UK Space Strategy, we have a Scottish Space Strategy, and we have support for those small businesses that have these really great ideas for changing the way we do things and doing different things in space. And we have funding is probably more available than it ever has been. And there's things like the satellite applications catapult, which kind of connect those businesses and help them develop. So if there's I don't know if it's unique, but it's certainly a really big benefit for the UK community.
Yeah, and that's all great, but we're in a really, really tough global competition here. We're suddenly entering a marketplace where there's these juggernauts that have been doing it for a very long time, and they do it very well, and they know they do it very well. And so when we're entering specifically the launch kind of market, we're up against 50 years of history, and I think trying to just go at it as business as normal, we're not going to get anywhere. And so I think that's what I was trying to get across before, is actually we kind of go down a little bit of a niche here where we're like, we stand for this. And if you want to launch in this way, if you want to put your product into space in a more sustainable manner, that you can hold your head up high and proud and shout about it, come to the UK. Because I think we're just not going to compete otherwise. The red carpet service that we're going to be able to offer with Virgin for satellites to get to space, that red carpet service also then comes from probably the most responsible and ethical spaceport that we're trying to develop. So it's that combination now, that USP, that the UK, that's happening up in Scotland as well. I think that's, it's changing, I guess, the definition of what success is for the industry now. And I think across any industry, that definition of success is changing. It's not about making, and I know Josh, you've experienced this with some of your investment raising,
Take away my point.
Yeah, sorry, well, I'll have another team, but yeah, I think, and just to go back about telling the space story, I think it takes non-space people to tell that story as well. So hence why I really was keen to have you here today and a lot of the people in this room. I'm not a space geek at all. Many people will probably hear me say this. I'm not really into space. I'm into what space can do for us here on Earth. And I think that's why I've been quite easy, it's easy for me to go and to talk to the average person, because I'm kind of the average person. I just have this role, which is amazing, so lucky to have it. But I think we need to have more people that aren't space geeks talk about space.
Well, that comes down to your sustainability peer group as well. So making sure, others outside of this room are in that.
Thank you. So now to hear from the space geek. One of the, Martyn touched on it, the UK has been very good at innovating, but we've been appalling at commercialising those innovations. Really ever since we've given away the Merlin engine, the Spitfire and radar, we've been really good at the early stage research, taking place in universities and everything else, really small scale innovation, and then we give it all away. I actually really think that the space industry, and to be honest, even though I'm based in Cardiff, I have to say the activity going on around Spaceport Cornwall is really one of the first catalytic things that I've seen in the space industry, possibly ever since we launched Prospero, that actually means we have an incredible basis in which to commercialise all of these innovations. And Mel touched on it earlier, and one of the things she said is around it makes us one of only 3 countries. Now, what we mean by that is right now only 2 countries in the world are able to build a satellite, launch it, operate it, and return it to their own territory. Those 2 countries are America and China. So even Russia doesn't actually return to its own territory. And neither of those countries actually give a shit about what they do with that technology, where it goes, and what it implements. So when Mel almost took away my point, we spoke to No, you didn't take it away. When we spoke to an American veteran, I was like, okay, in space we can produce this next generation compound semiconductor. You don't have to rely on all these fossil fuels to do it. You don't take away from the scarce water that's going on in Taiwan right now, and we produce it. And when it comes back, it prevents 75% of CO2 emissions. And she went, I'm going to stop you there. I don't care. So we, like you just said, we don't care and we don't want your money, which was a refreshing principle. But taking that back into the UK, it means we're going to be the third country that can do all of those activities. So Space Force we're planning to return to the UK, we're looking to return to Cardigan Bay with an electric solution. And all that means that not only do we have that operating cycle, but it also means we now have entirely new technologies that can then be implemented in all of these other sectors that which right now aren't understanding how they're using space. So it's not GPS, it's not telecom, it's actually in that tractor or that 5G cell tower is something that was made in space and has dramatically improved the efficiency of the way that system operates.
You're brilliant, and you're jumping ahead to the next question, but I think everybody's already taking forward. Yeah.
One of the things that it's impossible to ignore is that it's more expensive to bring Virgin Orbit over to the UK and launch them here than take the small satellites over to the States and launch them there. So why are we doing it? We're doing it to create an industry here, but coming to bang on about this or not, the UK not getting it. Unless the UK and the public gets why we're doing this and the opportunity and the jobs that this can be set up, we're wasting our time. And the other thing is Mel was like, and the team were, I think, about 5 years ahead of everybody else in terms of doing a spaceport here. But when we announced it 3 or 4 years ago at Farnborough, the rest of the world woke up and go, that's a really good idea. So we are now getting besieged with people, whether it's Poland, Luxembourg, Japan, Brazil, they all want to do spaceports, which is pretty easy for Virgin Orbit because we can fly anywhere. But with my UK hat on, it's just really important we get on and do this. Get people to understand why we're doing it and build from it, otherwise we are literally wasting our time and wasting our money. But the opportunity is amazing when people get it.
Thanks, Patrick. I think on top of that, we've already heard 75 spaceports going to be happening in the next 5 years, was it?
Yeah.
So, and this comes back to this responsibility and what could Cornwall and the UK do.
There's not a big enough market for 75. But, even if there's 10, but we've got to be one of the 10 here. So. And we've got amazing advantage, but we've got to keep going.
And that comes down to that code of conduct as well, because it's all unregulated from what I've been hearing from everyone, and this is that opportunity now is to sort of set that direction for the future and take it from Cornwall. So Tabitha, I'm going to sort of jump over to you a sec. It's kind of, you from sort of OneWeb has a sort of responsible space program, and we had to talk about it last night. Can you sort of talk about it a bit more?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity actually. So we're still on a journey, we're pretty new still, OneWeb, and our sustainability on Earth strategy I think is on a journey, but right from the very beginning OneWeb was conceived to think about responsibility in space, this whole new domain that is above our heads that we can't really see and touch. So what can we do to preserve this really, really important shared natural resource and to protect it for the future? So we've got 3 key things that we think about for responsible space and what that means to OneWeb. The first one is the design of the satellite. How do we really design it in the right way? How do we make it sure that it's ultra robust and reliable before we put it in space? We don't test things in space, we test them on the ground and then launch them. So thinking about the design of the satellite. The other thing is what we've done since the very beginning is put a little hook on the satellite, a grappling hook, so that in the future, and it's coming, the future is in about 2 years, our partners, the ecosystem in space, can then grab those satellites more easily and pull them back down and deorbit them out of space. So the design of the satellite is crucial. Then there's the management of the satellites. We have a constellation of satellites, but we have 2 teams in the US and in the UK that are called fleet managers. And they are actually the managers who daily, 24 hours a day, fly the satellites. They're not just whizzing around at thousands of miles an hour every 90 minutes around the globe. They're managed actively. And those fleet managers need to manoeuvre them and make sure that they don't collide with other satellites or with other pieces of debris. And we just launched a partnership with a company called Leo Labs. We've got some really cool software to help us manage collision avoidance on that front. And then the third thing is around active deorbiting, so putting the satellites down at the end of their life. And again, we're working in partnership with Astroscale, a UK company, to find ways in 2024 to pull our satellites out of orbit at the end of life. So, and I think one of the USPs from just stepping back for the UK is collaboration. We can't do this alone. In fact, nobody can do space alone. So all of these collaborations, it's all about creating an ecosystem. In fact, creating a whole new industry to service cleaning up space. And that's quite exciting, I think, as well, to have that whole industry. So it's about the ecosystem, it's about managing space and the design and operation of the satellites. That's what it means to us.
Brilliant, Tabitha. I think that's the thing, relatively before everything just gets shot up, wherever it ends up, you must send the car up and God knows when that's going to come back.
Space is quite good though.
Yeah.
One of the interesting, if we talk about space debris and how, it's another place that we humans are, willy-nilly going and messing up. But space actually is a very well-documented industry. In fact, at a previous occasion here I pulled out my party trick, which is a fan fold of about 200 pages of the entire catalogue of the space industry since Sputnik 1 in 1957. And it is catalogued, everything that's up there, we know about it and we monitor it, and we use ground stations like Goonhilly to make sure that we know what is there, so that OneWeb can do the collision avoidance. And it is possible now. Now we've got to the stage where we need to do something about it and remove items as well as put more items up. But it's not like the car industry or the plastic industry or whatever, where it's just, we have no handle on what we're doing.
Yeah, and I guess that goes back to the fact there's, of a year, there's a minimal amount of launches, sub 200, I believe, at the moment, launches around the world. As we're talking about space debris, it'd be good for Martyn from D-Orbit, how are companies like yourself trying to solve the issues around making a mess of space?
Thank you. The images you often see in the media of the Earth surrounded by a cloud of debris can be a bit worrying, but they're usually not to scale, so that's not the one that scares me. The one that scares me is when you do a graph of space debris accumulation over time and it's just kind of rising, and you get something like an anti-satellite test and you have a big step change, so that's the kind of catalysing the industry to doing something about it. I mentioned one of the things D-Orbit do, which is last mile delivery. But we have a great opportunity because when we've delivered those small satellites into space, the vehicle that's done that is a vehicle we can use for other things in space, which stay there for 3 or 4 years before we safely deorbit it. So we can test technology for other people, which is a great opportunity for other companies, or we can test our own technology. So our roadmap is kind of going into, what can we do about space debris, what can we do about life extension. So we've got a few projects at the moment and we're kind of building that up. If you want to do something about space debris, you need to identify it first and track it. And that's done in places like Goonhilly generally. But we're looking at maybe you can do that from space where it's a bit closer. We can identify debris and categorize it with some clever AI and send that data back to the ground to complement services like Goonhilly. And then we have a mission which is looking at space debris. So we have a device that you can attach to a piece of debris. At the moment, it's the initial kind of version of that is going to be attached to the payload adapter on the rocket, on the Vega rocket. And then it's going to, once the rocket is delivered its payload, it's then going to bring that safely down and all would be left in space, so it's going to safely deorbit.
Okay, actually, because I can see I'm running out of time, and I guess there's going to be lots of questions, and we thought rather than, we can open up questions, I've got a couple more questions myself here, but as lunch is approaching, that you can take this opportunity to start questioning people there. So a couple of last questions, and thanks for that. And I guess it comes back to what Tabitha said, there's huge collaboration needed. and from Earth to space and back again on all that information, everything that flows between organisations, and learning from each other, so transparency between each other. So to Patrick and Josh, are there any of your own missions or missions you're aware of that tackle global issues and made you proud to be a part of the space sector?
Evolving space sector, that.
Biggest thing that made a difference in my life was finally getting rich in space. I look forward. Look, Tabitha's going to educate women in the less developed world. The seaweed stuff we're talking about is just unbelievable. What Josh manufacturing stuff in space, it's just incredible what's going to happen. But in terms of today, the most sort of it is quite. I'm sure when you see this stuff, you'll get quite emotional. I get quite emotional about it when you see our stuff launching. On our first successful launch, we launched 6 microsats per unit around the US. They were literally made back of garages, they're the size of shoeboxes. They did stuff I can't begin to explain what they do, but the guys who made them were really excited. But my biggest disappointment is I've tried really hard to get unions in the UK to do it. I've had no interest whatsoever. The opposite, why are unions in the UK not wanting to build sats like we are in the US at the moment? I just think it's an amazing opportunity that we're missing out on.
Thanks, Patrick. Josh?
So all of the previous space missions I worked on, I'm probably not that proud of, and that's one of the reasons why we started Space Launch in the first place. The whole reason me and my co-founder got into the space industry was to do something that fundamentally made a difference. I was at this thing, before lockdown, and there was this American guy who was like, I'm telling you now, you can either make money or do good. Can't do both. And I was like, well, that's a lie. And that's one of the reasons, again, why Space Launch got started, because we could see that there was this market opportunity for both in-space manufacturing and returning things to Earth. But at the same time, that fundamentally we lacked all of that infrastructure to actually support those activities. So right now, all of this stuff, like in-space manufacturing, it's not new. We've been doing it since 1974. Now it takes place in the International Space Station. That's so old, and it does so many things for so many people that it's not good at any of them. And so that's why we were like, well, actually, the thing you need to do is move the factory component of the space station away from it so that it can operate properly. It's been an interesting journey. We started in 2018 in a garage. The week that we went into lockdown, me and my co-founder handed our notices in. I was supposed to move house and I didn't. And my mum called me up because she was so furious that I quit my job during a global pandemic and recession. Now we're 27 people, and we're going back for that first mission of ours this year, which hopefully will be on that version or a bit more normal.
Fantastic, and I think again, it's that Gail said at the start, that everybody here is, can make a difference, and in it to make a difference. It's not just getting up there, it's not just making money, it's actually what good can we do. And this goes back to, I guess, the responsibility. That's the bit I'm interested in, the impact. And as you said, Mel, we haven't got the data of something, we've got data of what's gone before, and we're going to gather that data. But with all this being quite a challenge as a role, I'm going to ask you, so what is your deep-seated motivation to keep up against this really hard coalface, for want of a better word, of opposition, even being female within this industry, I'm sure has its challenges at times, let alone everything else you're experiencing, say, with Extinction Rebellion. What is that motivation? What keeps you just going?
I was not expecting this question. It's honestly the other females in my life. From my 2 daughters to my mom, who was the first female park ranger where I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and seeing what she did for nature and for our planet. And I never expected to be working in the space industry, and I think that's really important when I go into schools, because I can say to them, look, I'm not from space, I'm not an astrophysicist, but here I am. I was told when I was little that I wanted to go into astronomy, and I was told by a teacher that it was impossible. So I think for me, that spurs me. It's kind of I love surprising people. I love it. I love walking into a room and people judging me right off the get-go from probably what I look like or my accent. And I open my mouth and that surprise. And I continue to love to do that. And I continue to love to do it with, kill it with kindness and positivity. I'm Canadian through and through, that's stereotypical, but that's not weakness. So I guess that's what's driving me is, my 2 girls, my mom, where I've come from, and the fact that I think there is a real potential here to do some positive you know, to create positive change for a community, and that's what I'm all about. And you don't really live in Cornwall, you know, to make money, do you? You do it because one live here as, you know, this amazing surroundings that we have here, but it's the community and it's Cornwall. I can't walk, you know, my dog on the beach or drop my girls off at school without somebody asking me and holding me to account for what I'm doing, and I love that. So I think that's what, you know, gets us up and out every day.
So brilliant women, accountability in Cornwall. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then one final bit before we go. Gail, do you still want to sort of not do the questions, let that just be the audience get to talk, or would you like a bit of questions?
What do you think? Who's got pressing questions? Who's happy to hold them till over lunch?
So we can have it on
Pressing
stage.
questions, show of hands.
Okay, so final thing. So a question for Ian, which I submit, and then a question for all of you to step up just before we finish. It's 2030, you're back on the stage at Eden Project. What have you achieved? Okay? Blue sky, I think we said earlier, whatever you want to call it. So, but a question just for Ian, just bringing it back down to Cornwall and Goonhilly and its heritage. You know, how have attitudes towards sustainability changed over the time? You've been at Goonhilly, managing it. What's changed? And then across that 60 years.
Gosh, yeah, well, we think about it now. We know about global warming, and we wouldn't have known about it without going to space. You know, I love to go sailing, and it's great to go down to the ocean and see the sea, but you can't go down to the ocean with a tape measure and measure it, and measure the ocean height. You can only do that from space. You know, we wouldn't know about the ocean rising without being able to measure it from space. But I think, gosh, I'm an inclement to Cornwall, a settler here, and I'm going to be controversial now. One of the things that I've noticed about the wonderfully resourceful Cornish people who lend their hands to a number of different things, as that you are very inward looking, and I think one of the things that we can do in this sort of quest to look at the environment is to look at all of the amazing things that we do as a county. We are so resourceful and resilient, and we live within our means to a large extent. We can export that, and we should be much more outward looking and take the things that we can do with Kerno Sat and the launch and actually show the world how to do it better as well.
Brilliant, great answer. Tabitha, you want to finish? Or are you going to
Do you mind
2030?
if I could just leap to 2030? Because I had a thought about Sir Tim's comment earlier about this amazing place in India, the hospital with the 36 million eyeballs. And in 2030, I feel that there could be that kind of facility in Cornwall, and the doctors from India could be sending via real-time data those eyeball pictures to that centre in Cornwall, where they could perhaps be doing, even teaching surgery in real time over connectivity. So it can, I think that could be, for me, one dream for 2030.
Brilliant. I chose 2030 as well because it's the culmination of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a lot of data, a lot of measuring, and it'll be a very interesting time. And as Tim said, there's a lot of reinvention of that data. So maybe this is going to be the first time we can actually have real actions behind that data. So 2030, we're here now. Eden, we're all a bit older, still fairly free. And who wants to give me a 2030 compact? You've got to definitely have a 2030 vision.
Well, mine's pretty simple. It's not very far away, but space making a material difference to being able to combat climate change. And I think it's the most important thing the world's got to deal with, and I think space can do it. We're just going to make it happen.
My vision for 2030 is that everybody, at least in the UK, is using something that was made in space every day, to the point where it's normal. In-space manufacturing is just part of our terrestrial infrastructure.
I think I'd like to be able to say in 2030 that the graph I was talking about, space debris accumulating, no one going, it's coming back down, and all the things we're trying to do to get rid of space debris are actually bearing fruit, and we're making impact We're also no longer launching things into space that are going to just stay there and make the problem worse. All those things can either be reused, recycling would be fantastic, or they can safely burn up in the atmosphere and they don't pollute the space environment, so we can continue using them.
So 2030 isn't that far away, so I think realistically what I would love to see by then is that we're launching, the cadence that we're expecting with Virgin, but that's just a cherry on top, and actually that we have our amazing Centre for Space Technologies facility growing and filled with businesses like Orbit and OneWeb and Spaceport and Goonhilly, and that's what's driving the space industry and the cluster in Cornwall, and that part of that is a outreach facility. We saw what we were able to do with just having the rocket here over the summer and the thousands of school children that we were able to inspire. We have this model here with what's happening at Eden. We can replicate something like that on site at the spaceport, where it's an outreach facility, it's a visitor attraction, and it's something that we're really focusing on introducing children to space, to satellites, but also to the impacts that we have on the world and how they can help us, conquer it. So I'd love to see that facility up and running, and I know Dave, who's not here, our outreach manager, that's his main passion in life, and I think my whole team share that. And another colonel's hat. Or two.
I'm going to answer the question by looking back 10 years, actually. So 10 years ago, Goonhilly was closed. There wasn't a space industry in Cornwall. The concept of coming to Cornwall and saying I want to open a space business was, I might as well have been from Mars. And here we are in a completely different world 10 years later. And another 10 years, I think we could have we could have the Cornish Space Agency. That's what we should be looking for.
And we're doing Canary.